surprising to find that our artistic expression of the community changes as the expression of the community changes as it's trying to look into the world in which it lives. Absolutely everything was important to the alchemists when they were doing their work. The idea of a unified worldview plays a central part in alchemy. They were trying to kind of keep it together rather than see it falling apart. But attention was paid to the position of the stars, the phases of the moon, dreams were recorded, intuition was listened to. There was nothing that was unrelated or irrelevant to the experiment in hand. Of course, that view is still pretty commonplace on most of the planet, and even our physicists have come to realise that everything they do, the setting up of the experiment, who the experimenter is, what the apparatus is that's looking at the result, all of those are completely critical to it, and none of it can be kind of disentangled. So have a quick look at the process, just a quick look at the process before the break, and then after the break I'm going to look at one or two of the cleverer alchemists that there were around, especially towards Shakespearean times, and we're also going to see how people got around to building or representing alchemical myths, sometimes in the most spectacular stone structures. The process is basically one of transformation of a base material into something else. And you can start with the absolute base material is the way that most of them did. The first part of the three-phase process is called nigredo, which comes from the word black, and it involves the taking and processing of a lesser matter or a base material, and the study of this seems to be a subject in itself. Base material is described as everywhere present, worthless, vile, and despised by all men. Those are the terms in which it's described throughout the literature, and everybody had a different idea of what this is. For Newton it was antimony, that thing discovered by Bacon that could be both a metal and a non-metal, although it was the same element. Others thought it was mercury for its running around techniques. Some thought it was the human imagination. For the mother of alchemy, Maria Prophetissa, it was the confused mass of the alchemist's self that was the base material. Now that's a pretty Jungian idea for somebody who's around 0 AD, I think. She had a lot of them actually. She's one of the people I'd really like to look a bit more into, because I think quite a lot of her stuff survives, or quite a lot of stuff that was at least assigned to her. The second stage, once you've got the base material, obviously some people, there's a lot of people who aren't really doing the alchemy and they really misunderstood it. So excrescents generally, you could imagine, piss and shit and pus, anything, the base of the material, for some people, the more chance there was of somehow getting gold out of it. So the second stage was to take this base material, whatever it was, and to cleanse it, to refine it. And it was called albedo, which is to whiten, which is associated with the word white. And the third stage was rubedo, which is to redden, which is the manifestation of the philosopher's stone, or the elixir. And this is called, we see this throughout drama and poetry and opera, as the mystic union of the soul and body, conjunctio, the chemical wedding, the marriage of the king and queen, the marriage of the sun and moon. All of these are, if you like, symbols of the manifestation of the philosopher's stone. And it was thought to be a direct revelation that humanity partakes in divine wonders and actually has divine secrets sleeping within it. And it was thought that all works of transformation, theatrical space, in the laboratory, the inner space of the human, everywhere where transformation was happening was regarded as alchemical space. Has everybody here been to a theatre, a live theatre, and seen a play on a stage? Sometimes when you get a bigger audience, there's 10 or 20 people who've never seen a live theatre show. Those of you who have will be aware of the transformation that occurs. When you see something really excellent on the stage, you're drawn into it in no time at all, and it won't let you go until you get to the end of it. It's even more so if you're actually on the stage playing a part, because you go from nothing, where with Shakespeare, for example, the people doing it quite often don't understand it in the first read-through, and then it just gets more and more real as you practice it, and then you get to put the fancy togs on, and it gets to feel even more real, and then when there's an audience out there, in a way it's really happening on the stage for you, in a real way, because if the person who's supposed to deliver your line isn't there, it's not going to happen, and that does occur, you know. And so on the stage it's a real thing. I saw a stage company recently doing a version of the seagull which they were inventing as they went along. Several people could play each of the parts, and they played scissors, paper, stone for who was going to play the parts in front of the audience. So every time they did it, they had different playing different parts, and they were making it up as they went along. And I'm not joking. As soon as they started, you couldn't leave it alone. And by the end of the play, you were genuinely worried about the mental state of the people on the stage. Absolutely incredible. The transformation they were ringing on the audience because you'd never seen it before and they'd never seen it before, simply because it had never happened before. Now that's the kind of transformation we're talking about. And you need to remember as well that the difference between somebody who walks on fire and burns and the person who walks on fire and only burns the trouser turn-ups off is a state of mind. So this is really important stuff. The other thing about the Negredo-Rubedo system is that it's thought, and it's believed, that there are actually several levels of gold. That you can have white gold and red gold. People might have read a little bit about white gold in connection with Saqqara in Egypt and levitation devices and things. So it's thought that there's a whole level associated with alchemy that was certainly being practiced in Egypt and probably in other places. Symbolically, we see references to this kind of process throughout the works of Shakespeare. A lot of the tales, a lot of the basic tales and the plots and things are actually alchemical metaphors. So we quite often see the old king, don't we? He's often dying, he's quite often insane, and here's basically the old matter or the old consciousness that has to be shattered during the Negredo, during this first part of the process. And then we see the young prince, the king's son, the new consciousness, and he's supposed to end the play kind of shining and preferably married after his refinement through whatever the process of the play is. But of course we know, don't we, that sooner or later the young prince, he's going to become the old consciousness and he'll be driven and mad and his son will have to come along. And this is the internal cycle of nature, the dying away and the rising up, the really important thing. If you look in shamanic societies, the Native American Indians and the Maya, especially all the peoples who lived in the Maya lands, in fact, they have colours associated with the directions, north, south, east and west, and they also have primary energies that are associated with those days. So the east and red is often associated with initiation or base material. The second part of the cycle will be white, will be associated with the north and with refinement. The next part with the west and with the transformation of the refined object. And lastly, you'll go to the south, which is the seed of that process. Now it strikes me that this is also a memory of how important this transformative process is and how important human beings are in their ability to express this on earth. But by Elizabethan times, many alchemists were beginning to see their own reflections as kind of, their own actions as reflections in miniature of the biblical Genesis. They actually saw themselves as pulling matter out of the ground of being, if you like. And now we have to bear in mind that scientists are making new elements. There's now a whole string, I think there's 2 rows of elements at the bottom of the elemental table that were made by human beings. This means that because we're here, it's no longer necessary for things to get boiled up in stars. Because we're here, new elements are coming into being, new things that weren't in the universe before. And when our star finally swells up and explodes, it will blow all of this stuff out there, so the next generation of stars will have new elements to play with. That's where alchemy eventually took us. So after the break, we'll have a look at some of the people. As long as you're happy to come back and have some more, we'll look at some specific cases.
Are we going to do questions right at the end, not now? Questions right at
If
the
that's
end.
okay, or you can come and have a quick chat during, I don't mind, whilst I slurp on my cider. Yes, but we'll let everybody go for the moment.